And good morning and welcome to our Kabbalah and Coffee class. Today is the 17th day of the month of Sivan. It is also the 15th day of the month of June. Somebody said it was Father's Day, but to me, Father's Day is every day. And we are in the midst of discussing the concept, the idea of it elsewhere in the Talmudic presentations where you find sort of differences even when it refers to heavenly issues, like different levels and obvious restricted, limited areas from here to there, chamber of this and chamber of that. These obviously refer to a beginning and an end somewhere, even when you're talking about a spiritual level. And so that's how we were talking last week, and he mentioned a whole bunch of examples, which we're going to do right now again. On the bottom of page 20, that's what we'll go. And then the footnotes will give us a glimpse into each one of these examples. Okay, Zalman, pull the plug out there. Okay. Let's start again from the bottom of page 20. It is written in the Zohar as follows. The last paragraph on the page. It is written in the Zohar, the Holy One, blessed be He, made the lower world similar to the upper world. Lower world is similar to the upper world. That means the way this world looks, you can get a glimpse into how the other world, the higher, upper world looks. In other words, this lower physical world is analogous to the upper spiritual world. So if you read in the book of the Ezekiel that we did on Shavuos, that birds were flying, it's a reference, it's an example, it's a parable, it's an analogy to something going on in heaven that should be more understandable, accessible to our own imagination, our own eyes, because we cannot possibly imagine what spirituality looks like, because it doesn't have a physical look to it. So they give us examples, they give us parables to make it easier for us to understand, to comprehend, to think about. So the world here, what happens in this world is an analogy to the upper world. The Heavenly Academy, so that's the first quote that he has, that there is such a thing called the Heavenly Academy and its order of study. That's example number one, that an academy, if there is an academy, then there is I have to use physical terms, that there is a location and there is a building or whatever, there's a beginning and an end. There's where the academy starts and where the academy finishes. If you're going to identify a location of an academy, then it's a location. Then it's a place. Then it's a level. He will all explain this all very carefully, but in the meantime, we are learning terms that the sages refer to as seemingly physical terms, although they are referring to a spiritual level. So the Heavenly Academy is one of them. And its order of study. Order of study is another area. It's not just an academy, but there obviously are people, or souls, or forms that have different ways of studying, even in heaven. So it's not all equal there. Okay, the chambers of the righteous. Okay, a chamber means that there is some kind of level there, and it's righteous people. It's housing righteous people. I think we should do each one individually. Then that will make it easier. So we finished with page 20. Let's go back to page 20 and look at the footnotes on the bottom, which is on page 21, footnote 5. Metifta Derakia, Academy of Heaven. Okay, that's the first one that we did. In heaven, there are various levels that are called academies. Okay, levels that they are given physical, worldly terms, which is an academy. An academy means a place where something happens and it's designated for that thing. So the Greenfield Hebrew Academy is a school in Atlanta where I taught for 10 years. Okay, so it's an academy among my other responsibilities in the middle school. There is Yeshiva Academy. That's an academy. What's an academy? Academy is a place which includes a lot of things. So let's see over here. The upper one is called the Academy of the Holy One, blessed be He. And Mesivta Derakia is the lower academy and is, page 22, synonymous with Gan Eden. Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. So we have upper academy, that's God, God's place. And then we have, you're on the right page. Then we have the lower academy called the Academy of Heaven and the Gan Eden, called the Garden of Eden. What's in the Garden of Eden? So we say in the Yizkor that the souls of the departed should repose in the Gan Eden, Garden of Eden. What's the Garden of Eden? So we know the Garden of Eden down here was the most utopian place it could be. Adam and Eve were there when they first started. That's the Garden of Eden here. That's an obvious metaphor for the Garden of Eden in the upper world. What's the Garden of Eden in the upper? Obviously a place of pleasure. The word Eden means pleasure. And a garden is another indication of a pleasure. So what is going on over there? That's where the souls are. And in that area is an academy in which the souls will learn and study and comprehend the deeper elements of Torah. Not the Torah the way we see it here, but what the Torah really is saying. Again, the Torah is using metaphors about an ox goring another ox or something. Or a donkey which is laden and it's lying there under its own weight. Or if two people are fighting, there's no such thing in the Garden of Eden. So what are they studying over there? They're studying what they really is referring to. On the higher levels, if you learn Kabbalah and Chassid, especially Chassidic teachings, you learn about the deeper inner meanings of all of this. In the Garden of Eden, you're really learning it and comprehending it, and that gives tremendous pleasure to the soul, as will be discussed on Tuesday at our what happens afterwards, either what's heaven and what's the other thing. So there are elements in heaven that are different from one place to another. You've got the Godly Academy and you've got the Eden Academy. The Heavenly Academy called the Garden of Eden. At times, this is at the top of the column, at times it is referred to as the Academy of the Angel Matat. Matat is the highest angel in heaven. After the souls of the righteous depart from this world, calls them the souls of the righteous, they ascend to the Mesivta Derakia, the Heavenly Academy, where they study Torah. Just as in the days of the Talmudic sages, there were two academies, one in Neher Da'ah, which is a city in the Babylonian area, and the other one in Sura. Sura we heard about during the Iraq War. That's another city there. In heaven too, there are two academies and two primary levels of Gan Eden, the upper and the lower. And he references this to Sota, which is the Talmud, and Rashi, then the Zohar, and other places in Hasidic teaching. So, in other words, we know that there are more than one level. If you're going to say more than one level, then one has to have a beginning and an end. You have to say that. So here's his first proof about the two levels, or other levels in heaven. Okay? That's proof number one. The proof number two that we did was the chambers of the righteous. That came over the page on page 22. Chambers of the righteous. Now, we did this last week as well. And let's see here. Heichal, which means chamber. The word in Hebrew is Heichal. In the introduction to Tikkunei Zohar is a section of the Zohar. The section of the Zohar the Zohar itself is the primary source of Kabbalah, written by Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Remember 4 weeks ago we had a picnic here, and we had a barbecue out there, and it started to rain, and we talked about sitting in the ship. And so that day marked the passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the author, the compiler of the Zohar. The Zohar being the first element and the primary element of Kabbalistic teachings. So it says over there, in a section of the Zohar called Tikkunei Zohar, Elijah is quoted. Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. He says like this: "You are he who has brought forth 10 garments." He talks about God. You have brought forth 10 garments, and we call them 10 sefirot. We call them the 10 levels, the 10 sefirot. In other words, these are the energies which carry God's energy into this world. These are into the world. These are the vessels. These are the garments that carry godliness, the godly energy down into this, so eventually into this world. 10, and a number of 10. And we call them 10 Sefirot, through which to direct hidden worlds which are not revealed and revealed worlds. You create hidden worlds that we don't know about and revealed worlds that we have. The Hebrew term for worlds is almin. In almin, that means, of course, worlds, from the word ha'elem, or concealment. The word for world means to be hidden. We discussed this at length last week, because when you look out there, you don't see God, you see the world, and it looks like it's an entity running on its own. You have to think carefully if you want to find God there. In the Zohar, the worlds are called Heichalot, chambers. Here we call them worlds. The Zohar refers to them as chambers. Now, what is so he says, there is the chamber of Chesed, which is kindness, the chamber of Gevura, which is discipline, severity, the chamber of Zechut. Zechut is merit, and each level has another chamber to it. We call it, we use it, we refer to it as in the term of chamber rather than the term world. Why would the Tikkunei Zohar, why would Elijah utilize the term Heichal, or chamber? He's going to say in the next paragraph. But let's see here. Within these chambers, souls of the righteous bask in the radiance of the Shekhinah. Shekhinah meaning the divine presence, which is a revealed level of godliness. And angels stand in fear and love of God. Hence, Heichalot HaTzadikim, or the chamber of the righteous. So, the chambers are places, locations, levels. They've got to be separated from one another. Why use the term chamber and not the term world? Which is in the next paragraph. Heichal, from the word hitkalalut, or inclusiveness, connotes that, quote, it contains all within it, end quote. Everything is included in it. Heichal, like included. Almost in English, you can almost hear the same kla. For example, the Heichal, or the chamber of Chesed, of kindness, in general is Chesed. That means the direction, the dominant force is of kindness. Kindness is to give, to expand, to constantly want to go outside of yourself. But more specifically, it contains Chokhmah of Chesed, which is the wisdom of kindness, the Chesed of Chesed, the kindness of kindness, along with all the 10 Sefirot, all the other ones, similar to a circle or house that contains many objects. So, when we talk about levels, we can generalize and say this is kindness and this is severity. But when we take a deeper look at something, we see more than that. For example, when a person is asking for kindness, okay, someone knocks on your door, wants some money, needs some money. So the first thing we have to do is we have to think. We have to think, first of all, is this a cause I want to be involved with? The thought itself we have to think about. Is my thought coming from a good place or not such a good place? A man once came into a great Hasidic master from yesteryear, a couple hundred years ago. And he gave this man, the Hasidic master was known to take care of different people. Anyway, he plunked down a massive sum of money. And the Rebbe looked at the sum, and he said to himself, gosh, I can take care of so-and-so very easily. Good. A few minutes later, so-and-so walks in. But when he walked in, and he needed the exact sum that the Rebbe had on the table, the Rebbe started thinking, is it fair for me to give him the entire sum and take care of him, or there may be some other people who may need it, and then maybe I should divide it and split it up. Then he said to himself, no, I'm going to give him the whole sum. And he gave him the whole sum. And he later explained that when he thought about his thought, that means when he analyzed his thinking of what to do, he realized that right away, as soon as he received the money, his first thought was, oh, now I can take care of him. What was the second thought? Where was the second thought coming from? If in his mind, which was a pure, holy mind, he made a decision to take care of so-and-so, then when the second thought came to his mind, obviously it wasn't from the kosher source. That's what he said. And therefore, he decided to go back to his first thought, give the guy money. I need more money for someone else. I have to find more money. If there's someone else in the meantime, this guy needs the money. So that was his thought. In other words, you think something through. Should I give? Should I not give? Then the next question is, should I give a lot? Should I give? How much should I give? So by the time you finished analyzing it, you've gotten your wisdom and your understanding and your connection level to actually want to give, be inspired to give. Then there's the inspiration, the kindness of the kindness. How kind is your kindness? Are you being kind because you want whatever from out of it? Or are you being kind because it's important to be kind? So if you're giving this guy, whatever it is, $100, is it because, all right, God, you owe me one then? Or because I need to be kind to this person? How kind is your kindness? The next question is, how disciplined is your kindness? Are you disciplined or are you not disciplined? Are you helping this person or are you just simply whatever? How compassionate is your kindness? Is it from compassion or is it from something else? Each one of them has a different area with which you could think, contemplate about the greatest. I think we need to turn this oven off. One of the reasons why it's too hot.
Turn it off.
Something is on somewhere. All right.
It's inside heat.
It was an Erev Yom Kippur, about 5 or 6 years ago. And I was in Kroger in Sandy Springs where we were still living then. And somebody had given me $100 bill for Yom Kippur charity. And it was in my pocket. Had given it to me a couple of hours before. Now I was in the store. No, I wasn't spending that $100. I was from a different account. This was a charity. And I turn around one of the aisles, and a woman comes over to me. And she talks to me in an accent, it's Russian. And she says, please, for a need for the holiday. I said, what holiday? It's obviously, I didn't believe that this was. So she started talking to me in Yiddish. Okay, and then you know she's Jewish. Okay, that's the first thing. You've set up that. And then she said, like, she's just come to the country. It wasn't a holiday, but she was in need. And she wanted to talk to the Jewish people who were walking around. And I said to myself, oh, I got $100 in my pocket. She asked me not to give her money. She asked me to buy her a gift card of Kroger. So if you give her money, she can go buy cigarettes or whatever. Give her a gift card. She could only buy what's in Kroger. She says, I simply need for food. Somehow I felt that she was sincere in the need. So I said, I have $20. She says, please, I'll give you. So I took the $100 and I bought the gift card. And Yom Kippur that year was on a Shabbos, like it was last year, like it is this year. Sunday morning, a kid ran into my office. I was sitting there. My bar mitzvah lessons were always Sunday morning. A kid runs into the office, says, my father's outside, he just sent me. Anyway, he gives me an envelope. He had his bar mitzvah about 4 or 5 months before. And he gives me an envelope. He says, this is for the bar mitzvah, and he runs out. I open it up, there's $1,000 in there. And I said right away, it had to come right after I made a decision to give this woman the $100 from the charity. He was giving it to me for the bar mitzvah lesson. I hadn't been paid, and this is 4 5 months later. Obviously, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the time, whatever it was. I don't really badger people for this kind of thing, but it came when it came. But I saw it as a message from God. Sometimes you have to give from the freedom of my heart. I wasn't saying, okay, God, you owe me now more charity, so I can. It just came. Oh, we got some more members of this class. Hey, participating in the class. What is it? Well, regular one.
No, but he can't have it.
Oh.
I have my number.
Okay. So we'll have some sun,
When
okay?
he was out front, I saw him.
Go look
I
in the
waved to
front.
him when we drove in
Go look in the front.
on the
You
patio.
talking about Hamish dad?
Yeah,
Yeah, he was out front really.
So sometimes you need to use more than simply, okay, I want to be kind and give. There is a process to being kind. And if it's done correctly, if it's done right, it's obviously it's a heart thing, but it should also be a mind thing. It should also be a giving. Okay, now I want to give. That's the idea here. So if you have a chamber of kindness, it's kindness. But when you take a closer look, you can notice that there's a lot more to kindness than just simply giving. Kindness means to give. I want to give. I want to be kind. I want to be a giver. But there's more to just simply giving than giving. And it has to be analyzed. And one of the reasons why it takes 7 weeks between Passover and Shavuos, the receiving of the Torah, you can leave Egypt. But where are your characteristics? So there are 7 of the characteristics. And we have each one of them, which each one of them contains the other 7. The 7. So in kindness, the top one is kindness. How kind is your kindness? How disciplined is your kindness? How compassionate is your kindness? How enduring is your kindness? How humble is your kindness? And so on. This is how the weeks, and every day we have another thought, a process of cleansing. It's not just accounting, but it's an accounting, to be accountable to yourself. And once we reach the end of 7 weeks, on the day number 50, then we could receive the Torah, because at 50 you reach a whole different plateau, a whole different level, as somebody's been writing in the Good Shabbos email in the last few weeks. And as somebody's wife mentioned it on Friday night as well. Yes, Robert.
No, I'm not gonna say anything. I didn't say anything.
Oh,
I did? Oh, well, it's a habit.
all right. And I promised I would mention you next at this time, so here I made your mention. It's not for the all eternity. It's going to be on the internet now forever and ever. All right. Okay.
I do have a question for you.
Ah, see, I just knew.
You do know.
If you show charity,
Tell me how my intuition is. Go ahead. Yeah.
if you show charity, does Hashem, notice, and he does something rather than if he didn't do it, or?
In the Torah, there is no greater promise for blessing and immediate blessing than the giving of charity. That means that it doesn't go through the regular channels, and sometimes and not. When you give charity, you get blessed. You never lose from what you give to charity. Never. That's very clear. And not only that, but when the Torah talks about giving the tithes in Deuteronomy, it says, "Tithe, you shall tithe," like twice. So the Talmud takes those words and it says aser to aser. The same word for aser, which is like eser or 10, is the same word for ashir, which means wealthy. It says the Talmud, give tithes and you will become wealthy. In other words, you won't lose from giving a tenth of your earnings. That's the sort of according to law, that is the minimum. And the person shouldn't splurge more than a fifth, which is a 20%.
Okay, see, the reason I ask this, someone's water heater went out, and I had about the same money to go get it, so I took the old one out, put the new one in, I replaced it, and for some odd reason, I bought a lottery ticket. And the next day, I took it to the grocery store, and it was just over the amount
Wow.
of the water heater.
Oh,
That's
wow.
amazing.
Wow.
You know,
That's
Wow.
amazing.
yeah, I mean, I thought, this is
This is a message.
strange.
That's amazing.
This is a message.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's illustrated. An
I'm-
illustration.
I'm
of
sorry it
what
didn't
we
happen
just
last
had.
week when it was $255 million.
You know,
Then we would have all become quite,
Comfortable.
yeah.
oh, yes.
All right.
Good story.
Yes.
That's this kind of thing. You know, you give away. I got 10 times more. But you don't lose. You
The
cannot
trick
lose.
is that you can't always
Yeah, you can't rely
see
on
it,
that.
and you can't.
Don't
do
play
it.
that game.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
You didn't do it for the sake of winning that.
Right.
You did it because, from the pureness of your heart. And God came right back at you and said, thank you, I take notice. So blessings come. The blessings absolutely come from kindness. There's no question about that. That is definitely unquestionable. The Torah promises that, and it doesn't give any conditions. Unconditional promise of blessings. Unconditional. There are 8 levels of charity. You know, maybe we should have one of these Tuesday night classes about what is charity and all that. Keep that in mind there, Iris. That would be nice, because there's so much. There's no in the Talmud it's referred to as the mitzvah. It doesn't even have to define what the mitzvah is. It's like the holiday of Sukkot is called the holiday. That's our next big holiday. That's called the holiday. It's not even called Sukkot. It's the holiday because it was so joyous and so holiday style, and we outside and all of that. That the Torah just calls it the holiday. The Talmud just calls it the holiday, the Chag. And this year it's going to be nice and into October there soon. We won't need the air conditioning out there. I'm looking forward to that. Be able to sit out there in the cooler element. You can put on another sweater, but if it's hot out there, what are you going to do? Take off your clothes. Even if you do, you're still going to schwitz.
Get arrested.
All right. So those were the first 2 examples of references in the sages to levels of spirituality as well. So we had the Heavenly Academy and we had Chambers. Example number 3 is on top of page 22. The announcement of Make Way. Whoa, that sounds like an interesting announcement. Make way, that means get out of the way, make way. That's number 7. Let's look at number 7, footnote number 7. This expression, you'll be surprised to hear, this expression is used both in the lower and upper worlds to trumpet the arrival of a great individual. When a person goes up to heaven, they are led to a certain place, and the announcement is made, make way, the great one is coming. Well, this so-and-so great one is on his way, or on her way. There's no him and her up there once you get up there. So whatever it is, there's an announcement made that people should be aware to greet whichever soul is coming up to heaven. The terrestrial use of this statement is found in Eruvin, that's a Talmudic volume, the 3rd one, it's 85b at the end, where the Mishnaic sage, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, or the Hanassi means the prince, is reported to have greeted 2 rich individuals with, make room for so-and-so. That's terrestrial use. Terrestrial is where?
The earth.
Down to earth. Celestial, it's celestial use. Celestial is up there. Is found in Brachot. It's the first volume of Talmud, 18b at the end, where it is related that before the death of the Talmudic sage Shmuel, one of the greatest sages mentioned frequently in the Talmud, it was announced in the heavens, make room. See also Ketubot, which is another volume of Talmud, and see also Isaiah 40, verse 3, Panu Derech, which means make way in reference to God. So make way means that there is a hierarchy. Someone special is coming. Special means he goes into a special place, or she goes into a special place. Special place means that there is something special and something not special. And another proof that there are differences up in heaven as well, in the spiritual world as well. Okay? Example number 4. The order of reception for the souls of the righteous that arrive from this world. Okay, that's number 8. During the lifetime of the righteous, there are times when their souls ascend from this world into the heavenly realms. See footnote number 13. That's an interesting footnote which we will look at soon. Okay, so we'll remember the example number 4 of a soul entering into heaven while it's still in this world.
And when does something like that happen? Is it in prayer? Is it in dream?
Good question.
Okay.
So let's wait till we get to footnote number 13, and we'll stop there, and I'll give the whole spiel about that. Okay. Number 5, the ascent. It doesn't have a number there, but I'm just reading. It's the 3rd line. The ascent. It's a 5th example. The ascent of Moses, our teacher, to heaven. Number 9. Look at the footnote, where he debated the angels on whether the Torah should be given to man. Shabbos. That's a volume of Talmud called Shabbos, 88b. What happens over there is as follows. Moses, as we know, spent 40 days and 40 nights in heaven. And what was he doing there? So he was studying. He was studying with God the oral Torah, so there should be a transmission of how to learn the Torah, how to study the Torah, how to understand the Torah, how to extrapolate from the Torah. He was given all these rules and laws and all that. When he got there, though, and this is referenced to in Psalm number 8, when he got there, the angel said to him, what's this Yilud Isha? What's this man born through a woman doing here? In other words, a human being. And God says, well, I'm giving the Torah now to the Jewish people. They said, how could you do that? Something that is called your treasure, the most spiritual, the essence of God, you're giving to people, human beings? Do you know what they're going to do with this? Do you know how many mistakes people are going to make as a result of this? Do you know how many religions are going to stand up and learn wrong and incite people against the Jewish people? What are you doing? So God said to Moses, you need to answer. You need to answer this one. Now, of course, God could have answered it, but he wanted the Torah to come from the human standpoint, not just from not God telling it to them, but the human being teaching them something. So Moses says, I'm afraid they're going to burn me up over here. So God says to Moses, hold on to my throne, which is again a metaphor. In other words, come closer, become more spiritual, come up. So Moses goes and he says to them, in the 10 Commandments it says, honor your father and your mother. Do you have a father or a mother? You were complaining about, I've come from a human being, a mother. Oh, the 10 Commandments says, honor your father and your mother. Do you have any time a propensity to murder? That you should be told don't murder? And what about resting on Shabbos? Do you guys work in the 6 days of the week so you should rest on Shabbos? And then the angels disappeared. That was the end of that. In other words, what Moses was saying was, as great and as lofty and as spiritual as you think you are, the Torah was given to people, even to those beings that were created from human mothers down on this earth. As again, someone wrote in the Good Shabbos email this past week, there has to be a down-to-earth trend. And ultimately, God wants it to be all the way on the lowest possible level, which is right here. So the Torah, God, he gives away his essence in the Torah. And the essence of God can be felt in the Torah. The first word of the 10 Commandments is Anochi, which means I, the essence of I. You can say Ani, which also means me, but Anochi means the I, the deepest I. Says the Talmud also in Shabbos that this word is an acronym for the 4 Aramaic words, Ana, Nafshi, Kesavis, Yahavis. I put my soul, says God, I wrote my soul into the Torah, and that's what I've given to you. The Torah is God's essence. It might not look like it, but when you get deeper and deeper, as I was saying before, when you look at kindness, it's kindness. But when you start taking a deeper look, you see a lot more.
Thing.
And the same thing is with the Torah. The Torah is of a tremendous document in which is every essence, every letter there is from God. And His essence is in that Torah. That is classic Jewish belief. I know other people may suggest otherwise, but that comes from total ignorance or wanton denial of God. But without the Torah being God's essence, there is no future for the Jewish people. Simply put, if you look at all these groups and movements that removed the God from the Torah, or learned twisted ways of how to adapt the Torah, they ended up with nothing. Those movements don't have any future. They don't promote. I'll say it openly. You have a reform movement. You look at the statistics. Out of 100 people in a reform movement, after 4 generations, you're lucky to be left with 2 in Judaism. The rest have completely left the fold, completely out. That you will never find them again. The only ones that do remain are the ones that remain more steadfast and become more observant. And it's the same with the conservative. Maybe a little bit more left behind. That's because there is no sanctity to the Torah. It's another document. And if it doesn't matter, then why does it matter who I marry? And why does it matter what I do and what I eat and where I go and there's no conscience with it, no conscience left. I do what I feel like. I do what I want. Man wrote the Torah. Or God gave it so it can be changed. If it can be changed, I'll change it the way I want. I like it. But there's things I don't like. There's things I'm uncomfortable with. I get it. Me too. That's what it is. I understand that you might not want to do something. You might not choose to do something. But to say that it's not from God, therefore I find my excuse, that removes the power. It removes the validity of the Torah. It comes along the Talmud and says you should know that the Torah isn't just a document. It's the essence of God. And you cannot if you want to get to the essence of God, if you want to become holy, then you need to study the Torah. And the Torah needs to be studied with that thought in mind. It's God's document. And every single word in this is therefore true and valid. And if I have a question, the question is on me. That I don't understand this properly. Not that there's no answer and therefore it's no good. But the attitude that we have in the Torah is, it says it over here, so it's got to be right. But it doesn't make sense. Okay, to me it doesn't make sense. I'll have to ask someone else. And it can sometimes take 20 or 30 years. Don't think that when I study the Torah and the things that I study, I understand everything I'm studying as well. I have questions. But I know that at the end of the day, if I haven't answered my question, it doesn't make that which is in the Torah invalid. It just makes my mind, it tells me that your mind is not yet ready for this. And eventually you find the answers, by the way, if they really bother you. You'll get to the bottom of it, you'll get to the answer of it. That's why we rabbis get paid the little bucks. People ask all these questions all the time.
Some groups, they get the Torah and they, where it says, like when they put Hashem in a masculine.
Yes, God is referred to in masculine, but He's also referred to in feminine. We say the Shekhinah. Shekhinah is a feminine word.
Yeah.
So that is again, it is a wanton focus on the completely wrong and twisted element. All right, so the Torah is masculine, so it's only for the male. Torah is sexist. You know how many times I heard that from the kids and the students whose parents would tell them to ask me these questions. Isn't the Torah sexist because it keeps on calling God a man? And the answer is, God is a man. Don't like it? I say, if you would think that I believe that God is a man, that's not the God I believe in. Because God can't be a man. If He's a man, then He's not a woman. And if God was a woman, He couldn't be a man. And you're restricting and limiting your God. God created man and woman for the reasons, for whatever he chose, for whyever he chose to do it that way.
But
But really, it's a metaphor for godliness coming into this world. There's a masculine aspect and there's a feminine aspect. The women run the world anyway. And
in Proverbs, it says that wisdom is, they use a female.
the
It
word,
says wisdom and Proverbs.
Right.
It says,
it's the wisdom of a woman that builds the house. Is that what you're referring to?
what was it? Wisdom, she cries out.
Oh, I
"Follow
see.
me and will
I
teach
see.
you."
Yes.
It's a feminine.
The word chokhmah, which is wisdom, ends with a hey, a huh, and that's always feminine.
Okay.
But so does understanding end with a hey, also feminine word, bina. Yet wisdom is associated with male, actually, not with female, despite the fact that there is female elements to that as well.
Okay.
It's the this is really completely off the topic, but the moon in Hebrew is called Levana, which Shane V. There you go. I knew you would come up with that song. Shane V. D. Levana, lichtig v'indi sterren. All right, but that's our old Yiddish folk song. So Levana is it means the moon. Once a month we do Kiddush Levana. We go outside and we make a blessing to God, praising God. One of the things on the heavenly host. We look at the moon every month. We do this. From the 7th of the Hebrew month to the 15th of the Hebrew month. We do it on a Saturday night if it's not cloudy, and if not, then we'll hopefully hope for the next night or the night after. It's just a 5-minute little short service, usually on Saturday nights, because the Talmud says when you go out to greet the moon, you should go out with your best clothing, because that is a reference to the Shekhinah. And it's a reference to the Jewish people, so you should have. So we go Saturday night when we're dressed with our Shabbos fine attire. But the word Levana, which means moon, and is feminine, also stands for Lamed Beis Nesivas HaChochma. Now this is way over what we're doing now, but it has to do with Chochma as well, which is a male aspect in the feminine world. And that's the combination of bringing them both together. So when it uses wisdom in a feminine sense, which is very rare, like the 4 sons. So the first one is called a Chacham. A Chacham is male, masculine, not feminine. So he's a wise guy or a wise person, called a Chacham. A Talmudic scholar you call a Talmud Chacham. That's a masculine way. So usually wisdom is associated with masculinity. The fact that you find it sometimes associated with femininity is just, as we mentioned before, there is a bringing together. Some males, all males have some femininity to them, and all females have some masculinity to them. Just depends on how much the hormones are raging inside of you to become more male or more, hello, how are you today? So some males are very, very heavily masculine, and you can't possibly imagine them understanding or being or even pretending to be a female. And some females are very masculine. You wonder what happened over here. Anyway, so that's what Moses was doing. Back to Moses on the mountain. Okay, we go to example number 6, which is right after little number 9 on the 3rd line. The ascent of Rabbi Yishmael, the high priest, and his question. Okay, now we go to footnote number 10. Before we start, I'm not sure if all of you stayed long enough in shul on Yom Kippur. But in the second half, after Yizkor, for the Musaf service, and we did end at 2 o'clock, by the way, so as I promised. No, not Kol Nidre. Kol Nidre day, Yom Kippur day, not Kol Nidre night. We ended at 2:05, and we resumed again at 6 o'clock, and we had a big break, a long enough break to. Anyway, so if you did stay, you might recall about the story of the 10 martyrs. It's a very bad, sad story. What happened was the Roman emperor looked in the Jewish folklore, looked in Jewish history, and he found that the 10 sons of Jacob sold Joseph into slavery. And so he calls in one of the rabbis and he says, tell me, what is the punishment for selling somebody into slavery? Kidnapping someone is, when it says in the Ten Commandments not to steal, it doesn't mean robbing someone. It means kidnapping. There's another time in the Torah where it says don't steal, in the book of Leviticus. That is a reference to stealing money, stealing objects, possessions. But stealing in the Ten Commandments is stealing people, kidnapping people, ransoming them, or for whatever reason. The reason why that is so is because all the rest of them are connected to life and death issues. Murder, committing adultery, punishable by death. So this one has to also be in that category, and it's kidnapping. So the sage said to the Roman emperor, what do you mean? It's in the Ten Commandments. If you steal, and then later on it says somebody who steals a person gets the death penalty. So he said, tell me, you've kidnapped, your ancestors, 10 of you, kidnapped Joseph and sold him into slavery. Was anything done about this? Well, I'm going to mete out the justice. I'm going to take the 10 of the greatest of the great. These were Talmudic sages. It didn't happen in one day. It happened over a few decades, but they murdered 10 in a very cruel, awful way. 10 of the greatest sages. One of them, you might know, his name was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, at the age of 40, couldn't read the Hebrew alphabet. Didn't know the Aleph Bet. And by the time he came back from studying, 24 years later, he had 24,000 students. He became a great sage. And at the end of his life, he taught that when they asked him, how could you teach Torah? The Romans forbade the teaching of Torah. He told the famous story of the fox and the fish. We have a fox running around over here. And we have rabbits and deer and all kinds of zoo animals. Anyway, so the fox was once walking along the river and he was starving. And he sees these fish, one after the next, big, fat, juicy fish. And he's trying to figure out, to connive a way to get these fish coming out of them, to get the fish to stop going to and fro. So he's looking out there and he sees one fish that's giving him a look. And he says, can I ask you a question? And the fish says, sure, go ahead. He says, why are you guys running to and fro? You're panicking over here. So the fish says, well, don't you know? The fishermen are coming in all the time and they're trying to take us out of the water. We can't survive without it. So the fox says, oh no, I'm so sorry for you. You know, in the olden days, our ancestors lived together one side by side. My grandfather and your grandfather lived together side by side. And I think the problem is that you've jumped into the river now. Why don't you come home with me? I'll take care of you. I'll look after you. I'll provide everything, all you need, like good old times. And the fish looks up at the fox and says, you loser. Don't you realize as soon as I walk out of here, I'm dead. This is the source of my life. Says Rabbi Akiva. This Torah is the source of life. If you stop teaching Torah, then what happens? You're dead. How could you leave the river? It's as smart as a fish, as a fish coming out of the water to live with the fox. You're dead. I might as well die studying Torah than die not studying Torah. And so they caught him. They arrested him. They sentenced him to death. And they came with iron combs and they ripped his skin off his bones until he died. And he was smiling. And his students said to him, how far can you go? Are you enjoying this? And he said, I have read the Shema all my life. And it says over there, you should love Hashem your God. You should love Hashem your God with all your heart and with all your soul. And I wondered when I would have the opportunity to serve God with my soul. Now I am. So to me, this is a mitzvah that I'm enjoying just like I enjoy any other mitzvah. And that's how he died. Now let's look into footnote 10. When the 10 martyrs were confronted with the news of their death, they asked, so when this happened, he said, I'm going to mete out the punishment. So they asked for 3 days to find out whether it had been the decree of heaven, whether this is something that God has decided. Now, God decides everything. But in other words, can we avert this decree? Can we get out of this? Rabbi Yishmael, the high priest, then ascended to heaven by uttering a divine name. The high priest was able to say God's name. What are we doing here?
Cutting the sequel.
Okay. Yeah, let's. Can we leave it until the end of the class? Thank you. So, the high priests were well aware of all of God's names and the potency that these names possess, and they would say it. Originally, they said it loudly, but then when people started listening and were taking it for wrong purposes, they would say it under their breath or murmur it. So Rabbi Yishmael, who was the high priest at that time, knew exactly how to do this. And so he said God's name, and he ended up in heaven. Okay? Their soul ascended to heaven. And he asked their question. He was told that their death had indeed been decreed by heaven. This is the Machzor for Yom Kippur, page 192. And it's the piyut, or the poetry entitled Eile Eskara. See also the Talmud in Brachot, when he Rabbi Yishmael also had other encounters with the presence of God. The Talmud tells in Brachot that he once walked into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur and he saw the angel sitting there. In other words, he saw a form, which was a form of godliness. And I'm just trying to remember the words so I can translate them into English. And he said to me, Yishmael, my son, give me a blessing. That's what the angel said to him. The angel's name was Akasriel. And so he said, Rabbi Yishmael said, may it be your will that your mercy should control your anger, and that you should overcome the need to punish and treat us beyond the measure, greater than the measure of the law. And all of our prayers should come up to you and should inspire you. And so it's similar, and the rest of it, it's 4 or 5 lines in the Talmud. And he nodded with his head and said, So these are encounters that the great ones had, either on earth or going up to heaven. So you see that there is an ability to go up somewhere. That's the point over here, to go to a place where you weren't before in a spiritual sense. Okay?
So you didn't answer if it's in a dream or.
But it's coming up in 13. We're going to get there. Rabbi John, that's the last one, 13. Okay, you know what, maybe we should, it's 11:07. Yes or no? We stop here?
No.
Mel says yes. All right, so we'll stop here and we will finish. It's going to get, in fact, much more fascinating. The next examples are much closer to us and are also very, very fascinating.